Commander Jake Sullivan stood in the center of the massive council chamber on Zentara Prime. The room was huge, with curved walls that stretched up so high he could barely see the ceiling. Around him sat 12 different alien species, each one looking down at him from their elevated seats. Their eyes were filled with something that made his stomach tight. They were trying not to laugh. Jake pressed a button on the small device in his hand. A blue light appeared in the air above him, showing pictures of Earth's fleet. 12 ships floated in the hologram, rotating slowly so everyone could see them from all sides. They looked sleek and clean, painted in dark gray with white markings. Each ship was about the size of a city block back on Earth. "These are humanity's finest warships," Jake said, his voice echoing in the big room. "Each one carries between 200 and 300 crew members. They represent 20 years of our best engineering and technology." A sound came from the Cronin section. It was Thorgrim, a creature that looked like a giant bear made of rock, making a noise that sounded like boulders rolling down a hill. Jake realized the alien was laughing. Other council members were shifting in their seats, and Jake could hear whispers in languages he didn't understand. The Zentaran ambassador, Crix Valoth, leaned forward. His skin was purple and smooth like a dolphin's, and his large black eyes reflected the light from the hologram. "Commander Sullivan," he said in perfect English, though his voice had a wet quality that made Jake think of underwater sounds. "These ships are interesting, but perhaps you could explain how such small vessels will help in our fight against the Vorthak Empire?" Jake had been expecting this question. "Our ships may be smaller, but they're fast and smart. Every system can be changed based on what we need. Our crews train for hundreds of different situations." More whispers filled the room. Jake caught some words he understood. Tiny, weak, and something that might have been cute in the ethereal language. Luminara, the ethereal representative, floated in her section of the room. She looked like she was made of silver mist that had learned to hold a shape. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. "We appreciate humanity's desire to help," she said, "but our smallest patrol ships carry 2,000 crew members. Our battle cruisers have 15,000. How can such small ships make a difference in real combat?" Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks, but he kept his voice steady. "Size isn't everything in space combat. Speed, tactics, and adaptability often matter more than raw firepower." Thorgrim made that rolling stone sound again. "Human, I have seen your test results. Your weapons are toys compared to our plasma cannons. Your armor is paper compared to our battle shields. What can you possibly do that we cannot do better?" From her command chair on the USS Freedom, Admiral Kate Morrison watched the meeting through a quantum communication link. She could see Jake's jaw tighten, the way it always did when he was angry but trying to stay professional. She made a note in her personal log. Council members show typical large ship bias. Recommend preparing crews for underestimation scenarios. The meeting continued for another hour. Species after species presented their fleets. The Zentarans showed their massive dreadnoughts, each one 5 miles long and bristling with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. The Cronins displayed their fortress ships, huge metal cubes covered in armor plating thick enough to walk on. The Ethereals revealed their energy vessels, beautiful ships made of pure light that could phase through solid matter. When each species finished their presentation, the council members nodded with respect and made approving sounds. When Jake had shown Earth's fleet, they had barely managed to hide their amusement. Finally, Crix Valoth called for the mission assignments. The Vorthak Empire has been expanding toward the Kepler Station sector. This is a critical trade hub and mining facility. We cannot let it fall. He touched a panel, and a new hologram appeared, showing a 3-dimensional map of space with dozens of colored dots representing different fleets. "The Zentaran First Fleet will take the primary battle line," he announced. Blue dots moved into position on the map. "The Cronin Heavy Division will provide close assault support." Red dots joined the blues. "The Ethereal Fast Attack Group will handle flanking maneuvers." Silver dots spread out along the sides. Jake waited as species after species received their combat assignments. Primary assault, heavy support, reconnaissance, orbital bombardment, supply line protection, Important jobs that would put them in the thick of the fighting. The human fleet, Crix Valoth said finally, will provide rear area support and cleanup operations. Jake blinked. Cleanup operations? Yes. After the real combat is finished, your ships can help rescue escape pods and salvage useful materials from destroyed vessels. It's important work and well suited to your capabilities. The other council members made agreeing sounds. Some of them were definitely smiling now, the ones whose faces could smile. Jake looked at the tactical display. The human ships were positioned far behind all the other fleets, in what was clearly the safest possible location. It was the kind of assignment you gave to new recruits or damaged ships that couldn't handle real combat. We accept the assignment, Jake said quietly. As the meeting ended and the various ambassadors filed out, Jake could hear them talking to each other. Their translation devices weren't perfect, but he caught enough words to understand what they were saying. Toy fleet. Playing at war. Cute little ships. One conversation was clearer than the others. Two Cronin officers were walking near, him speaking in their rumbling language. Why did the council even invite the humans, one asked. Politics, the other replied. Their planet has some rare minerals we need. Easier to let them pretend to help than to just take what we want. Those tiny ships won't last 5 minutes against the Vorthak. That's why they're staying in the back. When real warriors fight, children should stay out of the way. Jake kept walking as if he hadn't heard anything, but his hands were clenched into fists and his jaw was so tight it hurt. That night on the USS Freedom, Admiral Morrison called a meeting of all human ship commanders. 12 faces appeared on her screen, the captains of humanity's finest vessels. They had all watched the council meeting, and she could see the same mix of anger and determination in their eyes that she felt in her own chest. Well, she said, now we know what we're up against. Not just the Vorthak Empire, but the assumption that we don't belong in this fight. Captain Lisa Brooks of the USS Guardian spoke first. Admiral, with respect, I think they're about to learn something about underestimating humans. Morrison smiled for the first time all day. Captain Brooks, I think you're absolutely right. 3 days later, the combined galactic fleet arrived at Kepler Station. The space around the mining facility looked like a metal city floating in the darkness. Huge platforms connected by bridges stretched for miles in every direction. Lights blinked on and off as mining ships moved between the asteroids, pulling out precious metals and rare elements that kept the galactic economy running. Captain Lisa Brooks stood on the bridge of the USS Guardian, watching the other ships take their positions. The alien vessels were massive beyond belief. The Zentaran dreadnoughts looked like floating mountains, their hulls covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. The Cronin fortress ships were perfect cubes, each side longer than 10 football fields. The ethereal vessels seemed to be made of pure light, shifting and changing shape as they moved. In the middle of all these giants, the 12 human ships looked like minnows swimming with whales. They had been assigned to the very back of the formation, so far from the expected battle zone that they would need telescopes to see the fighting. Lisa opened a communication channel to the other human ships. This is Guardian to all human vessels. Sound off. One by one, the other captains responded. Captain Ryan Clark from the USS Defender, his voice calm and professional. Captain Alex Price from the USS Vanguard, younger but eager to prove himself. 9 other commanders, each one representing the best humanity had to offer. All right, people, Lisa said. We all know what the council thinks of us. We're here to watch the big boys fight and clean up the mess afterward. But I want everyone ready for anything. Keep your sensors active and your weapon systems online. Captain Clark's voice came through the comm. Guardian, are you expecting trouble? I'm expecting the unexpected, Defender. That's what humans do best. 2 hours later, the Vorthak fleet appeared on the long-range sensors. At first, it was just a collection of dots on the screen, but as they got closer, the true size of the enemy force became clear. Over 200 ships of various sizes, led by 3 massive super dreadnoughts that made even the Zentaran vessels look small. On the bridge of the Zentaran flagship, Admiral Crix Valoth studied the enemy formation. They outnumber us slightly, he said to his officers, but our ships are individually more powerful. This should be a standard engagement. The battle began exactly as the galactic commanders expected. The two fleets formed long lines facing each other, like ancient ships preparing for a naval battle. The largest vessels moved to the front, while smaller ships took supporting positions. It was the way space battles had been fought for over 1,000 years. But the Vorthak had different ideas. Instead of forming a matching battle line, the enemy ships broke into smaller groups. Fast attack vessels darted forward, firing rapidly and then pulling back before the heavy guns could target them. Medium-sized cruisers formed hunting packs, surrounding individual Allied ships and attacking from multiple directions at once. The huge super-dreadnoughts hung back, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The first sign of trouble came when the Zentaran vessel, ZDS Eternal Glory, found itself surrounded by 6 Vorthak cruisers. The big ship's weapons could only fire in one direction at a time, while the enemy ships darted around it like angry hornets. Within minutes, the Eternal Glory's shields were failing under the concentrated fire. This is not how they are supposed to fight, Admiral Krix Veloth said, his voice tight with confusion. Where are their battle lines? Why are they not engaging us properly? The answer came in the form of 2 massive explosions. The Cronin Fortress ship Iron Mountain and the ethereal light cruiser Star Whisper both disappeared in balls of fire as Vorthak forces concentrated their attacks on single targets. On the USS Guardian, Lisa watched the battle with growing alarm. The alien fleets were losing badly, not because they lacked firepower, but because they were fighting the wrong kind of war. They had prepared for a formal, organized battle. The Vorthak were fighting like pirates. Guardian, this is Freedom, came Admiral Morrison's voice over the comm. I'm seeing some serious tactical problems with our allies. Roger that, Admiral. The enemy is using hit-and-run tactics. Our big friends don't know how to handle that. Agreed. I'm requesting permission from Admiral Krix Veloth to move our fleet into active positions. Lisa watched as another Allied ship, this one a Droken battlecruiser, took heavy damage from a coordinated Vorthak attack. Admiral, I don't think they're going to say yes. They still think we're just here to watch. She was right. When Admiral Morrison contacted the Zentaran flagship, the response was immediate and sharp. Negative, human fleet. Maintain your assigned positions. The situation is under control. But the situation clearly was not under control. A third Allied ship exploded, and several others were sending out distress calls. The Vorthak were picking apart the galactic fleet piece by piece. Captain Price's voice came over the human communication channel. This is Vanguard. I'm watching. Good people die out there while we sit back here doing nothing. I know, Alex, Lisa replied. But we have our orders. Orders from people who think we're children playing with toys, Captain Clark added from the Defender. Look at this mess. The Vorthak are using basic pack hunting tactics, and these aliens can't figure out how to counter it. Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She opened a private channel to all human ships, one that the alien fleet couldn't monitor. All ships, this is Guardian Actual. I'm looking at a tactical situation that's going from bad to worse. Our allies are getting slaughtered because they don't understand the enemy they're fighting. What are you thinking, Lisa? Admiral Morrison's voice was quiet. I'm thinking that sometimes you have to ignore bad orders to do the right thing. We came here to fight, not to watch good people die. The human fleet had spent 3 days studying the enemy through long-range sensors. They had analyzed Vorthak ship movements, weapon patterns, and tactical preferences. While the galactic fleets had assumed they would face a traditional battle, the humans had prepared for something different. All ships, Lisa announced. We're moving to active engagement. Stay in tight formation, watch each other's backs, and remember your training. Let's show them what human warships can really do. One by one, the 12 human vessels broke away from their assigned positions at the rear of the fleet. They accelerated toward the battle zone, their engines glowing bright blue in the darkness of space. On the Zentaran flagship, Admiral Krix Veloth's sensor officer reported the movement. Sir, the human ships are leaving their positions. What? Get me Admiral Morrison immediately. But by the time the communication went through, it was too late. The human fleet was already entering the battle zone, and they were moving faster than anyone had expected. The small ships that had looked so fragile and weak were suddenly darting through space like fighter jets, heading straight for the enemy. Captain Brooks opened her ship's weapon systems and targeted the nearest Vorthak vessel. "All right, people," she said to her crew. "Time to get to work." The USS Guardian fired its first shots of the war and everything changed. The first thing that shocked everyone was how fast the human ships moved. Captain Ryan Clark's USS Defender shot forward like a bullet, covering the distance to the battle zone in half the time it should have taken. The ship twisted and turned through space, dodging incoming fire with movements that seemed impossible for something so large. On the Zentaran flagship, Admiral Crix Veloth watched his sensors in confusion. "How are they moving like that? Our ships that size cannot perform such maneuvers." His tactical officer, a young Zentaran named Vel Korth, studied the readings. "Sir, their ships appear to have much more powerful engines than we estimated, and their hull design allows for extreme directional changes without structural damage." The Defender reached the first group of Vorthak ships, 6 medium cruisers that had been attacking a damaged Kronan vessel. Instead of engaging them head-on like the alien ships did, Captain Clark did something unexpected. He flew his ship underneath the enemy formation, so close to the Vorthak hulls that his shields were almost touching their armor. Then he opened fire. The weapons that came from the Defender were not the large, slow-moving plasma bolts that other species used. Instead, thousands of small projectiles shot out from hidden ports all along the ship's hull. They moved so fast they looked like streams of light, and they cut through the Vorthak armor like hot knives through butter. 3 of the enemy ships exploded in seconds. The other 3 tried to turn to follow the Defender, but Captain Clark was already gone, his ship spinning away to attack another group of enemies. "What kind of weapons are those?" Admiral Crix Veloth demanded. But there was no time to answer, because Captain Alex Price's USS Vanguard was doing something even more surprising. When 4 Vorthak ships tried to surround him, Price called 2 other human captains for help. The 3 human ships began flying in a complex pattern around each other, spiraling and weaving while never stopping their attack. The Vorthak ships couldn't figure out which human vessel to target. Every time they aimed at one, another would appear behind them. The 3 human ships moved like dancers, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. Their combined firepower created a moving ball of destruction that tore the enemy formation apart. Captain Sarah Kim's USS Relentless showed the galaxy something they had never seen before. Her ship launched what looked like normal missiles, but these weapons behaved strangely. Instead of exploding when they hit the enemy ships, they punched through the hull and disappeared inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Vorthak vessels began to fall apart from the inside. Pieces of their hulls simply dissolved as if something was eating the metal. Whole sections of the ships crumbled away, leaving huge holes that exposed the interior to space. "Admiral Morrison," came Admiral Crix Veloth's voice over the communication system. "What are those weapons? How are your ships able to move like that?" Admiral Morrison was now commanding from the USS Guardian after transferring from the Freedom. She smiled as she watched her ships tear through the enemy formation. "We call it human engineering, Admiral. Every one of our ships carries 40 different weapon systems and 30 different defensive setups. We can change our combat role in under 10 minutes, depending on what the battle needs." She paused to watch Captain Price's group destroy another enemy vessel. "You build your ships to be fortresses, Admiral. Big, powerful, intimidating. We build our ships to be tools. Fast, smart, adaptable. We don't fight the battles we expect to fight. We fight the battles we need to fight." The human ships continued their deadly dance through the enemy fleet. Captain Lisa Brooks coordinated an attack on one of the huge Vorthak super dreadnoughts. 6 human ships focused their fire on the massive vessel, but instead of trying to punch through its thick armor, they targeted something else entirely. Human weapons struck the enemy command centers, communication arrays, and sensor systems. They didn't try to destroy the huge ship. Instead, they made it blind and deaf, unable to coordinate with the rest of the Vorthak fleet. Without its ability to give orders, the super dreadnought became just a very large, very expensive piece of floating metal. The smaller Vorthak ships that had been following its command suddenly found themselves fighting alone, without any plan or coordination. Captain Ben Hughes of the USS Stryker took damage when 3 Vorthak ships managed to corner him near an asteroid. His ship's hull was scarred and smoking, but it kept fighting. Within minutes, Hughes had destroyed 2 of his attackers and sent the 3rd one running. "Stryker, report your status," Admiral Morrison called. "We're hurt but not down, Admiral. Hull breach in Section 7, but emergency repairs are holding. We're still combat effective." The alien commanders watching the battle couldn't believe what they were seeing. Ships that they had dismissed as toys were systematically dismantling an enemy fleet that had been winning just minutes before. The Vorthak began to realize they were fighting something different from the traditional galactic forces they had conquered before. These human ships didn't follow the old rules of space combat. They moved too fast, struck too precisely, and used weapons that no one had ever seen before. But the Vorthak had been conquering star systems for centuries. They were not about to give up easily. The enemy commander, a brutal creature named Warlord Thekex, made a decision that would prove to be a fatal mistake. Instead of retreating or trying to adapt to human tactics, he decided to concentrate his entire remaining fleet against the human ships. "All vessels," he broadcast to his forces, "focus all attacks on the small human ships. Destroy them, and the rest of this battle will be easy." Over 100 Vorthak vessels began converging on the 12 human ships. It looked like the humans were about to be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Admiral Morrison watched the enemy movement on her tactical display. This was exactly what she had been hoping for. "All ships, they're taking the bait. Execute Plan Delta." The human ships suddenly changed their behavior. Instead of continuing their individual attacks, they began moving toward a single point in space. It looked like they were retreating, bunching up together where they could be easily destroyed. The Vorthak fleet followed them, eager to finish off these troublesome small ships. Warlord Thax smiled as he watched his forces surround the humans. In minutes, the battle would be over. But Admiral Morrison had one more surprise to show the galaxy. The USS Freedom, which had been hanging back from the main battle, suddenly accelerated toward the center of the Vorthak formation. The ship was moving faster than anything that size should be able to move, straight toward the largest enemy vessel. "Admiral, what are you doing?" Captain Brooks called out. "Something that's going to end this fight," Morrison replied. "All ships, get ready for the finale." The Freedom shot toward the Vorthak flagship like a missile. It was about to show everyone what happened when human engineering met human determination. The USS Freedom accelerated toward the heart of the Vorthak fleet, like a comet made of metal and fire. Admiral Morrison sat in her command chair, watching the enemy flagship grow larger on her screen with each passing second. The massive Vorthak super dreadnought was 5 miles long and bristling with enough weapons to destroy a planet. "Admiral, you're heading straight for them," Captain Brooks called from the Guardian. "At that speed, you'll never be able to pull away in time." Morrison's voice was calm. "I'm not planning to pull away, Lisa." The bridge crew of the Freedom worked with quiet efficiency around her. They had trained for this exact scenario dozens of times, though they had hoped they would never need to use it. Every person knew their job, and every person knew what was about to happen. "All crew, this is the Admiral," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "Execute Evacuation Protocol 7. All hands to escape pods. You have 90 seconds." The Freedom's crew moved like a machine. They had practiced this evacuation so many times they could do it in their sleep. Within 60 seconds, every person except Admiral Morrison was sealed inside specially designed escape pods scattered throughout the ship. On the Vorthak flagship, Warlord Thakex watched the approaching human ship with confusion. "What is that small vessel trying to do? Does it think it can ram us? Our shields will crush it like an insect." His tactical officer, a scarred creature with 4 arms, studied the sensor readings. "Warlord, the human ship is moving very fast. Much faster than should be possible. It doesn't matter how fast it moves. One small ship cannot hurt us." But Admiral Morrison knew something that Warlord Thax did not. The Freedom was not just any ship. It was humanity's first experimental vessel, built with technology that even the other human captains didn't fully understand. The ship's hull was lined with thousands of small explosive charges, each one carefully placed and precisely timed. The Freedom had been designed not just as a warship, but as the ultimate sacrifice play. When there was no other way to win, the Freedom could become a weapon that would destroy anything it touched. Pod launch in 10 seconds, Morrison announced. She could hear the mechanical sounds of the escape pods preparing to fire away from the ship. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Launch. 47 escape pods shot away from the Freedom at high speed, each one carrying members of the crew to safety. The pods were small and fast, designed to avoid enemy fire and reach friendly ships. Admiral Morrison was now alone on the bridge of the Freedom. She looked at the tactical display one last time. The Vorthak flagship was less than 5 seconds away. Around it, over 100 enemy ships were positioned in a tight formation, exactly where she needed them to be. "This is Admiral Morrison to all human vessels," she said into her communicator. "It has been an honor serving with you. Take care of each other." She pressed a red button on her command console. The USS Freedom struck the Vorthak flagship at a significant fraction of light speed. But instead of simply crashing into the enemy ship, something extraordinary happened. The explosive charges along the Freedom's hull detonated in a precisely timed sequence, channeling all of the ship's momentum and explosive force directly into the enemy vessel's core. The Vorthak super dreadnought didn't just explode, it imploded, collapsing in on itself as the massive energies released by the collision created a temporary gravitational anomaly. The huge ship crumpled like a paper bag, and the gravitational waves that followed disabled a dozen nearby enemy vessels. But Admiral Morrison had one final surprise. 30 seconds after the collision, her escape pod shot away from the destruction. At incredible speed, the pod had been hidden in the Freedom's central core, protected by layers of armor and launched by the same explosive force that destroyed the enemy ship. "Morrison to Guardian," came the Admiral's voice over the communication system. "This is Freedom Actual. I'm alive and clear of the blast zone." Captain Brooks felt tears in her eyes as she heard her Admiral's voice. "Morrison, you crazy genius. We thought we'd lost you. Can't get rid of me that easily, Lisa. Now finish this fight." The destruction of the Vorthak flagship broke the enemy formation completely. Ships that had been working together suddenly found themselves alone and confused. Without their command ship, the Vorthak fleet had no coordination, no plan, and no way to adapt to the human tactics that were tearing them apart. Captain Sarah Kim's USS Relentless led the remaining 11 human ships in a final coordinated assault. They moved through the scattered enemy vessels like surgeons with scalpels, targeting specific systems on multiple ships at the same time. The humans had studied Vorthak ship design during the battle. They knew exactly where to hit to disable engines, weapons, communication systems, and life support. Instead of trying to destroy every enemy ship, they simply made them helpless. Captain Price's Vanguard disabled 3 enemy cruisers in 2 minutes by targeting their engine cores. Captain Clark's Defender took out the weapon systems on 5 Vorthak ships without destroying the vessels themselves. Captain Hughes's damaged Striker, still smoking from its earlier encounter, managed to disable 2 more enemy ships by knocking out their navigation systems. The human ships worked together like parts of a single machine. When one captain spotted a weakness in an enemy vessel, he immediately shared that information with the others. When a human ship needed support, the nearest friendly vessel was there in seconds. Within 30 minutes of Admiral Morrison's sacrifice, the Vorthak fleet was finished. Most of their ships were either destroyed or disabled. The few vessels that were still functional were trying to escape, running away from the small human ships that had proven so deadly. On the Zentaran flagship, Admiral Crix Veloth sat in stunned silence. His tactical displays showed the impossible truth. 12 small human ships had defeated an enemy fleet of over 200 vessels. The toy ships that his people had laughed at had accomplished what his massive dreadnoughts could not. "Get me Admiral Morrison," he said quietly. When Morrison's face appeared on his screen, she was floating in her escape pod, but she looked completely calm. "Yes, Admiral Crix Veloth." "How?" was all he could manage to say. Morrison smiled. "We fight smart, Admiral. We don't just bring big guns to a battle. We bring the right tools for the job. and we're not afraid to use them." She looked at something, off-screen, probably a damage report from her fleet. "We lost one ship today, the Freedom, but we saved this battle and we saved a lot of lives on both sides." "Both sides?" "We disabled most of the Vorthak ships instead of destroying them. Those crews will survive. Some of them might even decide they don't want to be conquerors anymore." Admiral Krix Valoth realized he was looking at a completely different kind of warrior than any he had ever known. These humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to solve problems. "Admiral Morrison," he said formally, "the Galactic Defense Council owes humanity an apology and an explanation." "The apology would be nice," Morrison replied. "But what I really want is a chance to show you how we can work together. This battle is over, but the war isn't, and I think we can teach each other some valuable lessons." As rescue ships moved in to collect Admiral Morrison and help with the aftermath of the battle, one thing was clear. The galaxy would never look at human toy ships the same way again. 2 weeks after the Battle of Kepler Station, the galactic political landscape had changed completely. News of the human victory had spread across thousands of star systems. The toy fleet that had been a joke was now the most talked-about military force in the galaxy. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the main conference room of the Zentaran flagship, looking out at the same council members who had dismissed her people just weeks before. But the atmosphere was completely different now. Instead of barely hidden laughter, she saw respect in their eyes. Instead of condescending smiles, she saw genuine interest. Admiral Krix Valoth rose from his seat. "Admiral Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Defense Council, I formally apologize for our treatment of humanity and your fleet. We judged you based on appearances rather than capabilities." Morrison nodded gracefully. "Apology accepted, Admiral. We're all here to learn from each other." Captain Lisa Brooks, now promoted to Admiral and sitting beside Morrison, opened a holographic display showing the battle statistics. "Since you asked for a full briefing on our tactics, here's what happened at Kepler Station." The Alien Council. Members leaned forward as Brooks explained human military philosophy. "You build your ships to be castles," she said. "Big, heavily armored, designed to take punishment and dish it out. That works well in traditional battles where both sides line up and shoot at each other." She changed the display to show ship schematics. "We build our ships to be multi-tools. Every human vessel can fill 6 different combat roles depending on what the situation needs. Fighter, bomber, scout, support vessel, assault ship, or command platform." Thorgrim, the massive Kronan commander, spoke up. "But how can such small ships carry so many different systems?" Captain Ryan Clark, now Admiral Clark, answered. "Our technology adapts to us, and we adapt to any situation. A single weapon system on our ships can be reconfigured to fire kinetic rounds, energy beams, electromagnetic pulses, or nanobotic disassemblers, depending on what the target requires." The ethereal representative, Luminara, shimmered with curiosity. "The nanobotic weapons you used were unlike anything we have seen. How do they work?" Admiral Morrison exchanged a glance with her officers. They had debated how much to reveal about their advanced technology. "The nanobots are microscopic machines that can break down specific materials. We program them to target enemy ship hulls, while leaving life support systems intact. It's designed to disable rather than kill." This statement caused a stir among the council members. Most galactic warfare was brutal and absolute. The idea of weapons designed to preserve enemy lives was foreign to them. Over the following weeks, requests for human military advisors flooded in from every major galactic power. The Kronan Empire wanted to learn human assault tactics. The ethereal collective sought to understand human adaptive technology. Even the proud Zentarans requested joint training exercises. Admiral Sarah Kim, formerly Captain Kim of the USS Relentless, received the most unusual assignment. She was tasked with establishing the first human military academy on a neutral world called Haven Prime. The academy would train alien officers in human tactical doctrine. On the day the academy opened, Kim stood before her first class of students, 50 officers from 12 different species, all eager to learn the secrets of human warfare. Among them was Velkorth, the young Zentaran who had been serving on Admiral Krixvaloth's flagship during the battle. "Welcome to the Human Military Academy," Kim said. "The first thing you need to understand is that we don't teach you how to fight like humans. We teach you how to think like humans." She walked among the students, noting their different sizes, shapes, and physiologies. "Every species here has natural advantages. Chronons are incredibly strong. Ethereals can phase through matter. Zentarans have perfect memory recall. We're going to teach you how to use those advantages in ways you never considered." Velkorth raised a tentacled appendage. "Admiral Kim, what is the most important human military principle?" Kim smiled. "Adaptability. We don't prepare for the wars we expect to fight. We prepare our minds to handle any war we might encounter." Meanwhile, Admiral Brooks was leading the first joint human-alien task force. Her new fleet combined human ships with vessels from 6 different species. The results were remarkable. Chronon fortress ships provided heavy firepower while human vessels handled precision strikes. Ethereal ships scouted ahead using their phasing abilities, while human ships coordinated the overall attack. The task force's first mission was against a group of space pirates who had been raiding trade routes. The pirates expected to face traditional galactic tactics. Instead, they encountered something completely new. Human ships disabled the pirate vessels while Chronon ships provided cover. Ethereal vessels phased through the pirate barriers to rescue hostages while Zentaran ships used their advanced sensors to locate hidden bases. The entire operation took 4 hours, and not a single civilian was harmed. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Station, Commander Jake Sullivan found himself back in the Galactic Defense Council chamber. But this time, he wasn't presenting humanity's ships for approval. He was presenting the latest threat assessment to the galaxy. "The Vorthak Empire has regrouped," he announced to the Council. "Our intelligence suggests they're preparing a massive assault on the core worlds." The whole alien council members no longer looked skeptical when humans spoke. They listened carefully as Sullivan outlined the threat. "The good news," Sullivan continued, "is that we're ready for them. The new joint tactical doctrine developed by our combined fleets has been tested in 12 separate engagements. We've had a 100% success rate." Admiral Krixvaloth stood up. "The Galactic Defense Council formally recognizes humanity as a Tier 1 military power and requests their leadership in all future joint operations." The vote was unanimous. That evening, Admiral Morrison sat in her quarters aboard the new flagship USS Unity, a vessel designed jointly by human and alien engineers. She was reading reports from the Academy, the joint task forces, and the various diplomatic missions that had grown out of humanity's military success. Captain Alex Price, now Admiral Price, entered her office. "Admiral, the latest class of Academy graduates includes officers from 17 different species, and 3 more worlds have requested to join our joint defense network." Morrison smiled. "It's amazing what a little mutual respect can accomplish." "More than that," Price replied. "We're not just fighting together anymore, we're thinking together. The Ethereals shared their phasing technology. The Chronons are teaching us their metallurgy techniques. The Zentarans gave us access to their memory enhancement systems." Morrison stood and walked to the window, looking out at the fleet assembled around them. Human ships flew alongside alien vessels, their crews working together in ways that would have been impossible just months before. "You know what the best part is?" she said. "We're not just stronger than we were before. We're all stronger. Every species in this alliance is learning from the others." The final scene showed human and alien crews working side by side aboard mixed vessels. In the Academy classrooms, students from dozens of species learned not just human tactics, but how to think creatively about any problem they might face. The tiny fleet that had once been a joke had become the foundation of a new kind of galactic defense. Humanity had not just joined the galactic community. They had helped create a better version of it, and in the vast cosmos, where threats still lurked in the darkness between stars, the combined fleets stood ready, no longer fighting as separate species but as one united force, prepared for whatever challenges the universe might bring.